What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Sarlacc Digest, celebrating Star Wars Podcast Day, February 7th, 2025. I am your host, Darth Butcher. I've got Scott Solo here.
What's up, nerds?
Grand Admiral Franz is here.
Yo!
For so long, he might have to leave. So we're going to get going here to celebrate Star Wars Podcast Day. 5 years in the making, right? We've been doing this for a while, especially our podcast. We've been doing it for 7 years and stuff. And I kind of wanted to talk about how we started as a podcast for, this is how it's gotten to this point. How do we get here, guys? You know what I mean? That we actually get invited to celebrate Star Wars podcasts in general with over 200 different podcasts that are out there. And how did we get invited to this? You know what I mean? It's cool. It's been a cool trip so far, and no, by all means, we're not done with it. I think we've got a lot more years to us. As long as they make content, we can still go. Yeah. They don't even have to make content. We can actually probably talk about Star Wars from what we had, from the original trilogy. It's pretty much how we all became friends in general. Was
and the tangents we go on from there. Too,
oh yeah,
right. I mean,
yeah. I mean, like I said,
we've been doing this in parking lots and lines since.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think Chris and I became friends through Star Wars. You know what I mean? And we didn't have much in common but Star Wars when we clicked, and it was those dark times where nothing was really going on, and I was afraid to mention Star Wars in public. You know what I mean? Then when you see like-minded individuals, it clicks. All of a sudden here we are doing a podcast, and it's pretty cool, man. I do want to say, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've known Chris since like 1995. I had no idea he was as big a Star Wars nerd as he actually is. So it was, it's fun. And being able to sit down and talk with you guys weekly has been just one of the highlights of my week every week. So
yeah, we would be doing this without podcasts, right? We'd be at functions or whatever it is, and we'd be talking Star Wars for hours on end. And we basically were just approached by the other half of the Sarlacc Digest that's not here anymore, or Ernie, Joey, Fanboy Mike, when those guys were in the podcasting world, and we met that other half in a Star Wars line, and just like for 16 hours talk Star Wars, and they were like, "You guys should do this, as a podcast." We're like, "I don't even know what that is. I don't even know what a podcast is." At first, I was like, "Okay, cool."
You asked me, dude, and I was like,
yeah. Chris is like, I don't know.
I can do a podcast.
He's like,
people. I'm antisocial, man.
Yeah, I mean, we're nerds, man. Like we
besides the 95 people we had in line, I don't talk to nobody.
It's true. It's true. It's true. It's just one of those things, and I know it's so funny because like when I was going back revisiting some older podcasts that we did when we started out.
Oh God,
it was rough. That's rough. It was pretty rough, man. Like I mean, it's still rough at times for me. So, but it was really rough at the beginning where it was like it felt scripted. It felt like I don't know what we're doing. Is anybody going to listen? And then we got to listen. It was like, oh crap, someone is.
When somebody had a soapbox, it was like an editorial written out.
Oh yeah.
Horrendous stuff going on. It was bad shit.
Yeah, I mean, but you grow with it, right? You learn and you grow, and then you just like there's some times where I just tell the guys like, hey guys, we got nothing going on. I'm just gonna turn the cameras on and talk. Pretty much how we're doing now. Just talk, and it ends up being like a 2-hour podcast, and we had nothing to go on.
Those are the best ones.
Yeah, and I did want to say, because it's Star Wars Podcast Day, if you are listening to this and you are thinking about doing something like that, I'm like, go for it. I try to encourage as much as I can, doing this journey. It today's day and age doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. You can do it off your phones if you wanted to. If you like it, just enjoy talking Star Wars or just whatever. Start a podcast. It's fun.
Audio or video or both.
Yeah.
You could make a podcast on home improvement if you want. I mean, there's so many different topics, and there's an audience for everything out there. Yeah. So why not?
Yeah. I mean, we learned, and not like I said, not that we're at the peak of our game because we got so many. So much.
I was just gonna say, remember we started with all sorts of equipment. Like we had all these little the mixers and all these things and stuff.
Yeah.
Now we're just sitting on our computers with the headsets, right?
Yeah.
If the pandemic did anything for us, it got us into the future, into the now anyway.
That was a thing
Because we were sitting there recording it, going through editing hard. Or actually, we weren't even editing that.
I was editing.
Yeah,
because
you did. You used to have notes, and I would see you would mark them when you would have to go and edit. And you would time.
Yeah, like because before we were all audio only, right? Yeah, we
That's right.
You know, we kind of did our thing, but I would record all of us on one track, and so if the mics were low or someone's talking low, I would have to manually go in there and raise and lower voices and it'd take about an hour or two.
We started by sharing mics, and then we all had a mic, and there were 6 of us, right? And then we're all meeting at Ernie's house.
Yeah.
Golly, dude, that was a lot of shit going. Then we tried to go video it and go on like Instagram.
Right.
So we could only do a half hour at a time.
Yeah,
the audio was terrible.
Yeah. Our first real interview, right, was during the pandemic. We didn't have that down yet.
Yeah.
Right. And Mark Thompson was gracious. Well, his internet wasn't all that hot either.
Right. No, it was all choppy.
But now look at us.
Yeah.
We're coming at you live in 4K.
At 4K. Yeah, like the
Maybe
whole
1K,
YouTube thing, the whole visual aspect of it. Because, you know, I mean, like I said, we're pretty much have some eccentric traits to us, you know, that we don't.
We're adorable.
Yeah. Well,
gray-haired Gen X.
Now that the fact that it's like when we had to go video with it, it's like, whoa, wait a second. So
I just got over ourselves up. I got a shower today. I got a brush.
Yeah, I just got over hearing my own voice back. Like that, I had to get over that first, you know. And now I was watching somebody do something on YouTube this week, and they were like, I had so many tribulations, you know, trying to do this YouTube thing, and at the end of the day, I was like, F it, let's just do it. Who cares? Someone's gonna say something, you know, whatever, you know. And we get our back and forths, you know. For the most part, it's positive, you know, but we do get some things here and there. But
you know what? I think the negative shit we turn around.
Oh yeah. I was just gonna say
we catch negative stuff on the show in the chat, and I can't think of anybody that came on negative that left negative.
No, they were a subscriber by the end.
Yeah, by the end, they thank us for the cool talk. Thanks for engaging with them. Listen to their point and making our own and not being a dick about their point. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I think we've got fans from arguments. Disagreements.
100%, because how we approach our Star Wars talk weekly is that, we do have our news and and the rumors and stuff, and we'll break that down and we want to bring that weekly dose of Star Wars to everybody, right? But we also have a lot to say about existing canon, existing lore, existing characters, what could have, should have been. But we do put it in its place. Like, we don't go, that's all trash and let's just trash it and this is everything like that. We kind of go like, all right, look, Acolyte, for example, like it had its moments, but we put it in its place and we talked about it. We talked about what it presented to us as a canon, as Star Wars canon.
Yeah. But
we also were kind of critical, and we saw what was happening around the Acolyte, like around like outside the Disney Plus, right? And we will bring that to the table, but we don't make that our focal point. And so when someone comes in chat and they try to make that the focal point, well, I'll give them their space. Like I told anybody, I'm not going to tell anybody how to live Star Wars. I won't. I'm not here for that. I'm just here to like I said, play in the sandbox, right? Yeah. And I think that's the majority of all the participants of Star Wars Podcast Day is that they love playing in the sandbox of Star Wars, you know, and they all started from somewhere. And I think we all our common story is that we all were doing this before we hit record, you know, which is a great thing. And that's the true heart and soul of Star Wars. It's like, this is how Star Wars brought us together to do this, you know. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was it.
I'm trying to think. Nothing else really would have got this much, right? Like, I can talk other stuff pretty well. I could talk pop culture. You could go.
Yeah. Let's go.
But I mean, Star Wars and stuff. You're going to pick an IP. This is the IP, and you could probably do comic books and stuff. But this is not the easiest one. This is just the one to get stuck, right? Probably the most far-reaching.
It's the closest to your heart, right?
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
You know, it's because
No matter how many times you watch the same 3 movies, from 77, 80, and 83, you can dissect it 1,000 different ways.
Dude,
for 47
there's so
years.
much more to say.
Yeah.
You know, I can't put my finger on it. Someone says, what are you going to talk about? I don't know, Star Wars. Well, what? I go, it doesn't matter. I mean, we just start talking and it just comes out. I was like, you know.
Somebody will say Aunt Beru, and all of a sudden you'll just go boom, 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 and you'll hit it. Somehow it'll hit the Yuzong Bong.
Yeah,
you know,
it really will.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why Darth Bane wore crustaceans.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
No, it is so true, and that's why Star Wars is such a phenomenon, right? It is like, I mean, yeah, there, like you said, there are other IPs. There are some bigger things out there. People converse and they really, shape their lives around it. But Star Wars has something where, it's special, and
dude,
even in conflict, it's special.
Even in right. This is the only IP that no matter what I'm watching, I'm gonna throw something on. If it's set post 1977, you are getting a Star Wars reference in it at some point. If it's a movie, a TV series, especially, you're gonna get it. I mean, there's no missing it if you have more than one season. You're gonna get it everywhere. That's a phenomenon that nothing else has. They don't do that with Superman. Would probably be the closest thing, like just using the term Superman, a Superman type of
household name kind of deal. Yeah,
and Spidey and Batman maybe tertiary, but it's Star Wars all the time. It's use the Force, the dark side. They mention characters by name and you know them.
Yes,
absolutely right. I was watching an episode of Doctor Who from years ago, and of course, there's a reference to Yoda in it, and it's like talk about another long-lasting, and that's the thing too. Other long-lasting IPs will bring in those, right? I mean, you can read a Superman comic and it will refer to Star Wars.
Yeah.
You can read a Marvel comic, you can see a Marvel movie. It'll refer Spider-Man, for God's sakes. I mean, how many
Civil War
Star Wars references were in that? War, exactly. Captain America in his book, yes, watch Star Wars, right?
That's right.
It permeates all pop culture.
Yes.
And
it's at the top.
Few others will. And
some try to repeat it.
Yeah.
They
try.
But because like when you say something about those, whether you mention Vader or Chewie or Yoda, the whole populace understands what you're meaning in the analogy. Yes. Right? Isn't that strange? Like you're like, oh yeah, I understand what he meant by you're acting like Yoda right now, or you're talking.
Yeah,
either way, I'm gonna get what he's saying. You know, or you see a dog.
It's
everybody
such a household.
What it's gonna be.
It's such a household name and such a household subject. Like all of the three of us here, especially, could say we don't remember a time without Star Wars. Like really, life in general is just like.
Even in the darkest times, it was there.
It was there, and that's that right there. That's the special thing that I appreciate living in this time. Like I said, Generation X, kind of stuff where it's like my whole life growing up, I didn't know that this was a phenomenon. I didn't know that this was a connection I was going to have with anybody. It was just something that I really enjoyed and fell in love with. And like, oh my God, I feel myself thinking about Star Wars so much that I'm by myself in this world. Right. And I was okay with that still,
but it feels back then it was something you kept to yourself.
Oh, it was total a personal relationship. It was a total, it wasn't a thing. Like when we were in high school, Star Wars, well, it was the dark times anyway. It wasn't, 90s, early 90s. It was not a thing.
Oh, that's when Heir of the Empire came out.
Well, the book,
right?
I remember Walden
it.
Bookstore.
Yeah, that started bringing
it. Really dating ourselves. But I do remember going to the sci-fi section and the bookstore and seeing like all these books that are coming out, like the Han Solo trilogy, the Heir of the Empire, the Thrawn trilogy, all these.
See, the Han and Lando were earlier 80s, right? Like,
they were,
But that Heir of the Empire brought it back.
Yeah,
and that's when it was like, oh wait, we got new Star Wars, and it's post Return of the Jedi.
Basically, it was 7, 8, 9 on
in my head, right? Yeah. Up until 7, 8, 9 came out.
Yeah, isn't that funny too? Anybody can say 7, 8, and 9, and everybody knows what you're talking about too. It's just like,
oh yeah. The word prequel. Whoever used a fucking prequel? Nobody, dude.
Yeah,
nobody. That was new.
Yep.
Was there prequels before the prequels?
Not a damn, dude.
No. I do remember a time before Star Wars, and I remember going to
trying
the
to give
store
you
and
an out
seeing those.
there, you know.
Actually, I know, appreciate that. I remember going to the store with my grandmother and seeing those action figures, and before seeing the movie, right? And just that. No, it was. I saw the movie first, but even still, you know, being a part of that, being there from the very beginning,
Yeah,
it was a revolution, man. It was.
yeah.
Everything changed.
Yeah,
So,
like I said, I vividly remember seeing Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
You know, and Yoda scaring the shit out of me. And
that
I
was
did
a
not
scary
like
movie, man.
I didn't like Yoda scared me as a kid, but the Hoth, the Battle of Hoth was, to me, in my mind, that was it. There was nothing past that, because they had the climactic battle at the beginning of the movie, and I was like, oh, I'm ready to go home. Like, I'm done.
I remember the movie. You want to see it? I remember more, for some reason, the glass cabinets where they sold all the little merch that we don't get anymore, like
the programs and stuff.
Programs, all the
yeah.
cups, all the stuff, like a whole little section of a little Star Wars store in the movie theater. You know?
Yeah. You know,
no, I remember being like Marco. I was, you know, I was scared because it was the first time I'd seen a movie where the heroes lost.
Yeah.
Right. It freaked me out. You know, Vader's Luke's dad, but he cut his hand off. What's happening? Why is Han Solo in an ice cube? What's going on? You know, it was unusual. You know, it was a different kind of movie.
Exactly. And that's why, you know, in those times, IPs and they took risks. You know what I mean? Like they did these things. You know, that second act left people for 2 years in the dark. You know, of Empire, put everybody in the dark with so many things, knowing there's a movie coming out, but at the same time, you know, like Transformers the movie, they came out and it just killed Generation 1 Transformers in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Dude,
and I was, as a kid, I'm like,
great.
Whoa, this is why I get on my soapbox about like progression of story. You know what I mean? Even though that might have been a business move on Hasbro's thing or comics, and same thing with GI Joe, right?
They just wipe them out in 10 minutes.
I didn't know that as a kid. As a kid, I was like, that's entertainment. Like that is a movie. That is story. So I look for that nowadays. You know what I mean? I look for like the Star Wars arc. I look for the Transformers killing major characters. And when they don't do it because they want to preserve it for a sequel or they want to preserve it for a franchise, you know, just like Jurassic Park. Jesus, just kill the dinosaurs already. You know what I mean?
But I mean, like Game of Thrones kills everybody.
Yeah. Game of Thrones.
It didn't matter.
And that's why I love George R.R. Martin, because he even comes out and says, look, all these classes that I have about writing novels, I threw it out the window basically because it didn't make sense in my world, and I did my own thing. And when he did that, it worked. And so when you have that guts to do that, you know, to be and not be like, no, I need you to write a book, but I also need you to make it open-ended so we can have 800 books after. And so we could just milk it and have a franchise, rather than like, this is an amazing story. Read it, learn it, and move on to another amazing story. You know what I mean? And I think our growing up with Star Wars and not growing into Star Wars kind of helped that with our way that we perceive Hollywood, and maybe that's why we're maybe overly critical on like I said, I'm talking Generation X, right? Our people in that aspect. When you don't, when I don't see something moving on to just stop and move on to something else, I lose interest really fast. Like I'm not into it for another franchise. You know what I mean? Like just go. You know.
I get what you're saying.
I gotta bounce.
Yeah.
So
all right, Chris.
You guys know, hey, happy Star Wars Podcast Day, number 5, man. And we'll see you guys on number 6. I'll see you before then, I suppose. I guess.
Yeah, we'll see you on
if we have to.
Toodles.
Later, man.
All right, later.
To your point, though, like what you're saying, I was getting caught up watching Cobra Kai, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about a series that started off being super sweet, right? And fun and retro, and it is so freaking convoluted now. It needed to end about 3 seasons ago.
I could not finish this last season. I started it and I was like, I'm done. Yeah.
The last 6 episodes are coming out next week. And I'm like,
I think they overwhelcome their stay.
Yeah. They did. They
Yeah.
overstayed. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what they did do was going back and rewatching the old Karate Kid movies is, they bring in all these old actors. I mean, to the point where Boy sweeping the floor in Karate Kid 3 is in Cobra Kai. He has a major role.
They made
It's
the world building on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was
great.
like I said, the concept was cool and everything, but yeah, they really beat it. And that's the whole thing, our friend Tommy from Blitz Transmissions, that's on our toy chest every Monday, so check it out too. It's a thing. He did an episode on his channel about nostalgia. Why are we so fixated on nostalgia? Do other generations fixate on nostalgia like we do, right? And this is why you have Cobra Kai, you have Transformers, you have G.I. Joe, you have everything that we grew up with. It's still here. And who keeps feeding that? We do. We keep feeding. I got all G.I. Joes, all trans. I mean, come on, like we feed the machine for the nostalgia trip. So, but we're also sticklers for like, let's move on. Let's. We were good without it. Yes, we will flock to it. Maybe that's our fault that we do feed the machine. Maybe it is our fault, but at the same time, they're not coming up with anything cool.
And that's a big part of the problem too. Whenever you live in a society, whenever you live in a culture where it is okay, if it's not beat to death, a la Cobra Kai, it is just it's rebooted, right? It's you get remakes, and I think the latest remake I saw was that they were going to do like a Labyrinth. Was it Labyrinth? Yeah, it was a Labyrinth remake. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Right. You don't need a sequel. You don't need a sequel to Goonies. You don't need a sequel to. You don't need to reboot these shows, right?
Especially without Jennifer Connelly, you can't do it.
There's no point. There's no point.
I don't want to see it without Jennifer.
I know. But my point is, there's good sides. There's a good side and there's a bad side to the nostalgia trip, right?
Yeah.
The good point is Star Wars, right? It's not getting beat to death because it's not the same series of characters 7 seasons long, just pushing it.
Yeah.
They do refresh, right? I mean, other than like the Clone Wars, which was a long series, right?
Yeah.
Every couple of seasons, you get something new, you get something fresh, you get a different point of view, you get Skeleton Crew, you get Acolyte, like it or not, you get Acolyte, right?
Yeah.
You get the Ahsoka series, you get all of these little things, but it's not being rebooted, right? We're not seeing a remake of Star Wars. I hope to God we never see a remake of Star Wars.
I told you,
we talked about that in our last show.
I would be very upset. Yeah, because I think the difference is Star Wars, and I'm going to say this, and I'll try to agree with it as we talk or disagree. I don't think Star Wars is nostalgia for us. Everything else is. When they do a new Ghostbusters movie, we watch it for the nostalgia. Good, G.I. Joe, all that stuff. When they come out with new things, we cater to it for nostalgia. I think like Star Wars is different. Like Star Wars, like I told you before, like okay, yeah, we grew up as kids playing and watching and playing all this stuff, but it wasn't our life. It wasn't our sole life. We had other things like G.I. Joe was major, right? Especially with you, right? You really catered to it. Yes, you love Star Wars, but I think the point when you go, I love this. Like I fell in love with Star Wars was different. And it's not from the day first when you were 2-3 years old. It actually came later when, like I said, you found yourself watching them and realizing there's something more there than just this amazing story. There's that connection to it. And so when I see something Star Wars, like even when it came back in '95 with the Power of the Force 2 figures and the special editions, it wasn't a nostalgia thing. It was I get to live this more, I guess.
Yes and no. Yes, no, you're right about the nostalgia. The movies are not the nostalgia. The movies are just great movies that I love, and I don't feel nostalgic when I watch those movies. I feel entertained and I feel love for those movies.
Right.
And no, and I mean, yes, the nostalgia is for the figures. I get the figures, and that's to me nostalgia. It's even if it's a new figure, it's that rush of adding something to my Star Wars collection.
Right? I see it as a continuation. You know, like a continuation. Yeah, and but Power of the Force 2, absolutely. They nailed us on the nostalgia aspect, and that came back. But also, people who had their vintage collection stuff or whatever, they added to it. It was like this brand new experience, you know, which is still to this day out of control.
It's what the, you know, it's what the retro figures. That's what they cater to. They cater to the nostalgia with the 5-point of articulation figures, right? And I love those things. Those are some of my favorite pieces.
Yeah.
Because those figures cater to my nostalgic side of Star Wars, which to me, that's my collection. My collection is my nostalgic side.
Right.
So that's why I say yes and no. I agree and disagree at the same time, just for, you know, the different aspects of Star Wars.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah, it's just the phenomenon is great talking about it. And again, I know we started talking about podcasting and Star Wars podcasting and how we got into this role of putting our thoughts into public space. You know what I mean? And you see how easily it is for us to, you know, go all over the place because it's fun. You know, again, it's we'd be talking like this if we wouldn't have mics in front of our face, you know, when we got together and stuff like that, you know. So I think that thinking about Star Wars Day and the first podcast, you know, and all that stuff, and how cool a media would take off like this. I think the fact that there's so many out there, and again, not everybody has that same feeling. It's like you can watch 2 different Star Wars podcasts and it'd be completely different, even though they have the same subject matter they're talking about, because fans consume Star Wars their own way, their own personal way. And that does go into if it's nostalgic or how they consume it, right? You know, like I said, if we were all into a Star Wars meeting room, we all submitted episode 7 to the Lucas, I guarantee you would get 200 different scripts, and not many on the same wavelength. Even us, as close as we are for Star Wars, I don't think we have different ideas, and that's what makes our talk unique. And everybody who does podcasting talks their own unique take on it, like the way they feel about Mace Windu, the way Scott feels about Mace Windu. It's 2 complete different things. So you would write him different than someone else would write him. Even
I hate the guy.
Yeah. So like, you know what I mean? And that's what's interesting, right? Like how can, I don't think another IP is that gray. You know what I mean? It's always black and white. Like Roadblock and G.I. Joe only did this, and he said this, and he can only do this. But Mace Windu, sure, let's put them all on. Like there's so many avenues. There's so many different thoughts and how characters react to different story plots. You know, again, and using this output on YouTube and podcasting, because the term podcasting is outdated, by the way. It's like. No one has iPods anymore. It's always on your stream on your phones or whatever it is. But, you know, but it's just a fun thing to do. And I never thought that we'd be doing it. I would be doing this. I know I'd be talking Star Wars with my friends, but I never thought it'd be a structured show.
Yeah. You know. I belonged to a podcast before this one called The Nerds with Attitude. That started like 9 years ago, and that podcast was not really a structured show. It was more of just open conversation about everything.
Right.
And it went to places where I was just like, I can't talk to you about Starcom figures from 1979.
Yeah.
I had some, but my knowledge isn't there, right? But and that's whenever Chris invited me to come in and be on this show, I'm like, oh, finally something I can focus on.
You said that you don't get a chance to have a voice that talks whenever they gloss over Star Wars, and it's like.
And there's a panel of 9 of us, and we all had, you know, different opinions. And it was like, we all have a love of Star Wars and a love of G.I. Joe, but there's everything else that we covered as well. It was more of a G.I. Joe podcast than anything else. And, you know, coming in here, though, getting the invite and sitting down with you guys is really, it's honestly been the highlight of the last several years. You know, my week, I get to look forward to every Wednesday. Oh, good. I get to sit down and talk about my favorite subject matter with my buddies. This is awesome.
And here's the thing, you know, and we say this all the time too. You know, you have a bad day, bad week going on, things are going on, and this is therapy. At the end of our hour 10, hour 20, when we get done, I feel so like that. I needed that. That was so good to just forget things and geek out for an hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I encourage anybody who's thinking about joining us for next year for Star Wars Day, right? When we do the 6th year and stuff, enter your podcast, even if it's solo, just just get stuff today's market. You can do it on your phone if you need to, but start with the solo and you start meeting a community that's out there that's willing to come onto your show and help you out, or you're willing to go onto other people's shows, help out. You will meet people throughout, this journey, and you can create a show of your own. If you like doing it, like I said, I'm going to take this Star Wars special edition too, to encourage people to do it, to create something, create a YouTube channel dedicated to, like you said, there's many interests out there. Anything. Doesn't have to be with a notion of, I'm going to make, I'm going to get all these subscribers. No, it's just the fact that you get to put yourself out there and have some interaction, and hopefully it's not toxic, but if you make toxic videos, then you're going to get toxicity back, so
that's another thing. That's why we try and keep it light, right? There are so many negative Star Wars podcasts out there, and we make a conscious effort to have constructive criticism about things that we don't necessarily like, right?
Yeah,
but we're not blanket.
We don't walk on eggshells. People. We don't walk on eggshells at all when it comes to anything Star Wars, because again, our first pillar of content is Star Wars, playing in the sandbox, presenting what was presented to us. We put it in its place, put it in canon, we talk about it. The second one is our opinions on it and everything. And then of course we always do the would have, could have, should have, stuff. And like when Chris was here, he was saying, when we do have someone coming in by the end of our podcast, they're here next week, because we do give them a forum, unless it's blatant come out here trolling and stuff. And we've had those too, but you learn to deal with it, and just
few and far between, though.
Very few. Yeah, very few. Every once in a while.
Our live chat, we call it the pit, because of course we're the Sarlacc.
Sarlacc, right? Yeah, exactly.
That's right. So the pit, where the conversations go, I love the fact that those conversations in the pit go in so many different tangents. They take what we start and they go off on their own, and we bring them into the conversation, and that's why we like to do the live stream, right? We love bringing the voices of the pit forward, right? Give them a say in it. And I like to think, like you were saying, how this is therapy for you. I like to think that it's therapy for everybody. Right?
Oh yeah.
Personally, I had a terrible week, but I knew today that I was going to be able to talk this and get all that negative energy out. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like to think that our pit also had, if they had bad days, I hope we help,
Yeah. We're fortunate that we can do it. We live in a country and a time and a place that we actually could have this kind of outlet, and not worry so much about, a lot of things affecting us outside. And so, be happy that you have this opportunity to do it. That's what I'm saying. If you're thinking about it, do it. Let's do it, And so I'll leave it like this, in our comment section, of course, let us know if you are starting a podcast, and we will visit you. We will make an effort to support and view subscribe and try to interact as much as we can, because again, Star Wars is a community, and there is room for us all in it. The very, very toxic ones, they weed themselves out. It's like there are people like, whatever.
We won't name names.
No, I just like, I don't care how toxic Star Wars as a name becomes. I still love it. You know what I mean? They can't talk me out of it. So doesn't matter. It's still great. Just don't remake Star Wars and we're good. Just don't remake it, like deliberately remake it. I know you already did it with, okay, never mind. That's another podcast for another day. But I hope that, again, we were trying to figure out, we wanted to contribute to Star Wars Podcast Day. And I think the best way to do it is to talk about Star Wars podcasting. You know what I mean? But for all the contributors this year, I think there's over like 200 different podcasts that are doing it. If you see the tag Star Wars Podcast Day, if you see another group that's doing their content, throw them a like, throw them a sub, give them a listen. You might find a new community to get involved with, and if you're new here, we appreciate you listening. We appreciate you staying this long and listening to us babble. And then hit that like and subscribe yourself, because we got more. We talk Star Wars toys too every other Monday on our Toy Chess Show. And of course, every week on our Star Wars Weekly, our Sarlacc Digest podcast proper, where we break down all Star Wars theories, news, and rumors till 1,000 years, whatever comes first.
And we've also got our 1 minute toy reviews, right?
Yes.
So 1 minute toy reviews that drop every other day. There is over 1,000 of them right now. So if you want to go back,
we're collectors, man. There's collectors of all things. You won't just find Star Wars in those 1 minute toy reviews. So if you collect G.I. Joe, Transformers, DC Universe, Marvel, Scott's got you covered. So it's a lot of fun, man, and everybody appreciates it. So, but yeah, we go broke for this, man. So
yes.
Again, everybody, thank you so much. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Chris, for stopping by. Again, everybody, all our links in the description below. Check us all out. Check out our affiliates and everybody who's with us in this awesome community. Happy Star Wars Day, Podcast Day 2025, the 5th year going on. Until next time, Scott.
Keep it nerdy, everybody.
This is Grand Admiral Thrawn. You are listening to the Sarlacc Digest. What a fascinating play on words.